you tend to have this view over the course of history is that someone that breaks rules and conventions is to be evaluated negatively. And one thing that we know over the course of human history, much less the social sciences, is that often people rebel not because they don't like the group or the society they're a part of, because their identity is so heavily woven with that society or that group that they care so much about its health and its longevity. And that when it goes the wrong direction and the wrong way, I can't help but speak out. I'm willing to risk and sacrifice my own personal well-being, knowing that for the longer time span of I want this group to function well and be the type of thing that's the aspirational unit that I wanted to be a part of in the first place. And so the first thing that I wanted to do with this work, and it's really like 50 years of social sciences, is say we tend to think of someone that disagrees with us and the things that we're pursuing as they are an annoyance, an irritant, and an obstacle, as opposed to they are the thing that is basically increasing the likelihood that we're going to make better decisions, think more effectively, and actually be more creative. And so I did want to stick these two words that don't go together. Principled, you know what matters most to you. And then this rebelliousness of some convention and tradition that's happening is a little bit wrong and no one's discussing it sufficiently.
So going to the question, how was Charles Darwin one of the most successful principled rebels in the academic history?
From the lens of diversity, there were so many people from so many countries, from the Middle East and from Asia, much less from like small islands and on the outskirts of Europe, that came to this concept first about evolution. The thing that Darwin did was he realized during the 1800s, it was such a religious society. It was such a creed that the world and humanity was bestowed upon us because of a supernatural power. That the idea of challenging that zeitgeist to say that maybe incrementally and gradually over time, things change slightly. And then those things that changed actually are helpful, actually last longer in the pool. That idea was heresy. So he waited. Among the many things he did was he figured, let me wait until people are ready to be open and receptive to these ideas. And he let a number of authors publish works first that received all the negative criticism that he anticipated. And only then in the 1890s or 1850s did he decide to publish his own work on evolution.
So can we zoom in on that? Based on your book, right? What are like a list of ingredients and successful strategies that he actually utilized? You mentioned patience. You mentioned delegation of ownership in a certain degree. Of course, as academics, there is this ownership, and academia, generally speaking, is a pretty egoic field because intellectuals compete with intellectuals. But if you can produce like a list of ingredients and strategies that allow Darwin to actually succeed with his attempt.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm so glad you're diving into this. Okay, so you're talking about 1859. He reveals the origin of species. That's his tome on evolution. Everything you think about evolutionary psychology, evolutionary science, it starts with this book. First thing he does, which is most important, is makes this a group project. So he brings in, who are my allies? Let me allow them to get some credit for this work. Let them speak for me because I'm not a good orator. That's not my strength. And so I'm going to compensate for my strength for not only bringing people as collaborators on this thing called evolutionary science, but I'm going to leverage their strengths in situations that I can't defend myself. So you have Darwin's bulldog, and that's basically Aldous Huxley's father, who basically is an amazing orator, has great rhetorical skills, and is extremely good in arguing. Darwin was depressogenic. It's hard as a psychologist to go back to say he had recurrent chronic depressive episodes. But if you read his writings, you can make a decent assessment of that. He was not comfortable being rejected. He is challenging the entire worldview that maybe God isn't responsible for everything here. And then maybe humans evolved. He alludes to it. And so if you're challenging the world and everyone in it who's an intellectual elite at the time, you better be able to handle criticism well and be able to dish it out, because you're going to get some friction and you're going to get some noise. And he had his bulldogs that would go to scientific conferences and speak for him. The other thing on this list is he really was one of the first scientists to do a trade book, which is, I want to make this in a way so that if you didn't get your PhD in molecular science or botany or biology, this will grab you. So he would create these beautiful descriptions of pigeons and how they interact with each other, and squirrels. And he would talk about, barnacles as these living creatures that all that green gook on the bottom of a boat is that actually it's not the same thing over the course of generations. It's changed. And so him bring you in speaking, you might have thought of the barnacle as like this one green mess that you try to kick off your boat. If you look closely at it, ... And that was not a style that people used prior to Darwin.
I think the undercurrent of that is one of the theses of your book, one's ability to move through and overcome emotional resistance. So can you define what emotional resistance is per your definition? And why is that something that all of us, whether it's author, persuaders, orators, or whatever, even everyday folks, why is it something, a key concept we should grapple with? Because everything is emotions.
Yeah, you have to assume, unless you match the beliefs and values and thoughts of someone exactly, which is nobody on earth, then when you raise an idea that's going to be a little bit tangential, have like a 0.7 correlation as you and I talk, there might be some resistance that appears, some disgruntlement about that missing bit of details where you have some thoughts, I haven't thought about it yet, or I disagree with it. And you might not hear their criticism, but you're at least going to get the nonverbals, or at least going to get the pauses that says, you said something that I have yet to be able to nod my head or say, Todd, that was such a good insight that you had there. So that's your low level tension, which is you brought something in that people haven't properly thought about before. On the other extreme, high levels of tension, is you get your blues and reds in the United States communicate with each other, which is two different views of how the country operates. And you're going to differ on immigration, differ on what the wages would be kind of for entry level employees, to what degree should people have a safety net in terms of maternal care or being older in life and no longer working anymore. So these are really important issues. And if you discuss them with anybody who disagrees with you on this topic, you can expect some degree of resistance. And so one of the things that's essential to being principled and dissenting or disagreeing or rebelling is that you have to develop the mental fortitude to handle rejection, evaluation, and unfortunately, on the online world, trolls.
Yeah, so speaking of trade book that Darwin developed, if you were to develop a trade book to, as you said, to strengthen one's mental fortitude, what are some of the steps and beautiful descriptions and pictures would you include in that trade book?
So I'll give you even a more close to heart example. I'm preparing a brand new talk right now on curiosity for about 2,000 educators. And instead of starting with the science, I am debating whether to starting of who would you want to be and why? Would it be the Fonz from Happy Days or Richie Cunningham? And then I describe a little bit detail. There'll be a picture of the two of them on the screen, imagine. And I just talk about how the Fonz, he wore this leather jacket. Every woman in the diner loved him, would come over, wanted to touch him and just be near him, kick a vending machine, the soda pops right out. Just quintessentially cool character that we all would love to be a little bit. Richie Cunningham has this great, loving, caring family, but he's a relative nobody as he goes into the diner or in school. And the question is, who would you want to be and why? And it's not that your answer matters. What matters is, what if you thought about curiosity as directing it outward and inwardly and constantly oscillating between the two? And all this whole discussion about do you want to be the Fonz or Richie Cunningham is to set up a conversation of maybe curiosity is best understood as a reprioritization device to think about what do we care about? What do we want to attend to? Why do we want to attend to it? And to use that as a lens to go through the science without ever mentioning any scientific study.